Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. Welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution, where we showcase incredible souls, and women especially, who have taken that radical responsibility in their own lives and are here to share that with you. And speaking of amazing souls, you know those moments when someone walks on stage and you feel their presence before they even say a word? Well, my guest today teaches that, which I'm so excited to explore that with her. But before we get into all of that, we're going to talk about where she's been in her life because it's incredible. She isn't just a speaking coach, she's a maestra, and she's literally helped some of the most dynamic people that you will know when she shares her story hit the right note. And yes, that is a pun in that statement, and we'll get to it later. Her first love was opera. So she's directed over 50 operas around the world. It's a lot, people, and help superstars command the stage. And we'll talk about some of those superstars. But she's traded in her arias for boardrooms and other places. And now she helps women shatter glass ceilings with their voices, not by shouting louder like I like to do, but speaking smarter. And her motto, change the way you're perceived by changing the way you communicate. And it's not about making a point, it's about making a difference. And that's what she is doing in this world. She's the creator of the Visible and Valued Leadership Certification. She's the host of her own podcast, Speakers Who Get Results. And she is the go-to strategist for leaders. And I have seen the testimonials of the leaders that she has helped who want to be seen, heard, and celebrated. And if you've ever felt like you weren't being heard, that seems like a female thing to me. This episode is your standing ovation moment. Elizabeth Bachman is our guest today. And Elizabeth, I'm so glad you're here. And the first thing I always ask my guests is, where are you right now? Not where you're located geographically, because we'll talk about that too. Fabulous. But where are you? Who is Elizabeth right now in 2025? And then we'll talk about how you got here and where you're going.
What a great question. Thank you, Debbie. I was listening to that. I said, that's the most creative intro I have heard in a very long time. Wow, it just loves it. Makes me go, oh gosh, I'm going to have to live up to this. So
you already do. You already do.
So as another podcast host, you really did your homework. Kudos to you. Where am I right now? That's a good question. At the moment, I am working with women who feel unheard. Basically, they have a seat at the table, often corporate women, but also entrepreneurs who have a seat at the table, but still aren't listened to. Yeah. And there are a lot of reasons why that happens. But the main problem is when you're taken for granted and not paid attention to, then other people get the recognition, the promotion, the job. So I tend to work with women, particularly who've been passed over and are pissed off about it. Mm-hmm. What I'm doing in the short term is I'm now doing webinars once a month about storytelling, strategic storytelling for women leaders. We are recording this in early November, and I've got one coming up called How to Get Recognized, Promoted, or Hired Without Bragging, which is strategic storytelling for women leaders. And then I also alternate that with webinars about executive presence. Executive presence is often an excuse for somebody saying, we don't want to hire you, but we can't figure out why, or we don't want to promote you. We don't really know why. We don't have a good reason for it. So we'll just say it's because you're lacking executive presence, which is frankly let me find a
You
word
can
I
say
can
whatever you
say on a
want on this
podcast.
podcast.
Nonsense. It's like, it's bullshit basically.
That's right. I was going to say,
But
please just say that word because it's
yes,
bullshit.
like
Yes.
bullshit trying to come out of my mouth here. That word, but it's also real, and
Yeah.
you can change the way you're perceived by changing how you communicate. Means that you are talking to people in a language they can understand. And that's really what I'm about is who are you talking to? Who needs to hear you? What do you want them to think about you? Then how do you position yourself so that is what they think? And quite often, women especially think they should know. They're supposed to know what I'm good at because I know what I'm good at. People are busy. So they're not going to know unless you tell them. And I have been the best kept secret and I was tired of it. So I decided I was going to get out there and start
Mhm.
talking about what I'm really good at. Another part of that is how you talk about what you're good at, which means recognizing what you're good at. It's so easy for many of us, not just women, but most of my clients are women. It's so easy for so many of us to say, yeah, I did that. That was easy. You forget to take it to talk about your wins, your successes, to celebrate. Take more than just 30 seconds to celebrate your successes. And so, one of the other benefits of storytelling is when you talk about what you're good at, you can do it without bragging, and you also hear yourself say it. When you're actually saying, wow, I really did that. I really did found and run an opera company for 11 years. The fact I'm no longer doing that doesn't invalidate the fact that I did it.
Yes. That's so critical. There's so much to unpack there. I don't even know where to start, but I'm going to start with the thing that sparked me, particularly about the storytelling. I love speaking and I've been to every speaker training thing that's ever been known to man, probably, but storytelling is always an essential ingredient. So if anybody is thinking of communicating in any way, having storytelling abilities is crucial, number one. But number two, women, we have that in spades, literally, but we
Yeah.
don't know how to channel it. I want you to talk a little bit about just the whole idea about storytelling from the perspective of what these webinars are, share how somebody can get involved with those. But more importantly, use an example of how somebody could deliver a message and then give us an example of what storytelling. We as women want to tell you the whole thing instead of the
Yes.
story, which is the essential ingredient. So share a little bit about storytelling because I find it so important in this arena.
Unpack your part that you were just saying is we learn about the world from the stories we hear from our parents. And we learn about the world from the stories around us. Every TV commercial ever is a story. And in 30 seconds, they're not going to tell you to drive this car because the specs of the engine is. It's going to be showing you in the car being a happy person so that you get the idea that if you're going to drive a Volvo, you're safe. If you're going to drive a Toyota, you're happy. If you're driving a Mustang, then you're going to go fast. Things like that. It's part of our whole life, and it's how we communicate. What I talk about is strategic storytelling. My company is called Strategic Speaking for Results. I'm all about how do you get the result. And actually, that comes from 30 years in the opera business, where in America, you've got 3 weeks to put something up on the stage.
That's
You have all the
almost incredible
planning.
to believe. 3 weeks,
Yeah.
but yeah.
But everybody gets together on day one and you sing through it and then you stage it and then you get it ready. And 3 weeks later, the audience is there, the public is there, and you have to deliver a product.
Mhm.
So I learned early on how to do something efficiently
Mhm.
because I had to, how you have to do it. And I also learned that it made people happier if they knew where we were going. When you're trying to get something done, so you're telling a story to get something done, stories illustrate your point. You have to figure out what your point is. So if the point
it's
is
important.
yeah, especially if you're in a profession where you have to talk a lot about data. Stories are really good. Stories and metaphors are part of it. I work with scientists a lot. I work with lawyers a lot. The storytelling is there to convince somebody to give you the result you want. Either it's a story about how great you are so that they hire you so you get that job, or it's what my team has done and why I'm a good leader, therefore I should be promoted. Or maybe it's I am an entrepreneur and I need to tell you why you should hire me instead of the next person. Because nobody does anything unique. We all do variations of something that is known. So, what makes you different? Why should you hire me instead of another person? This is where stories are really helpful. Now, you talked about all the details. That's part of it. That gets to how people listen, how people think, and how people listen. And there are a million ways of saying there are two kinds of people in the world, but in terms of communicators, we've had for centuries conversations about men's language and women's language. And it is not that binary. It's not just men on one side and women on the other side. There's a whole spectrum of how people communicate. Nobody's all one thing. But for the sake of clarity, we'll say men's language. I like to think of it as single focused thinkers. And these are the people who are task oriented and they do one thing at a time. They do it till it's done, hopefully. And that's traditionally men, that's historically men from centuries of the way men spoke and worked. It's not always. In the last 50 years or so, more and more women are taking equal positions in business and in politics and so forth. So there are lots of women who are single focused. Then you've got the multi-focused thinkers who are the people who see the world in a web of relationships. And they're the ones for whom the details really matter and context really matters. And how did we get here? And that is traditionally women, historically women, but not always.
Yeah.
I have a male neighbor who can go on and on. And then he says,
I have those friends.
Yes, yes, he's a guy and he says he's a lawyer. He's really smart.
I know.
And then he tells these stories that go on and on and on. And he says, and I'll get to the point in a minute. And then he goes on for another 20 minutes. And then he said, I'll get to the point in a minute. It's what you need to know is that it's like we're using the same words, but we're speaking two different languages.
Yeah.
And if you think of it as language, as a translation problem, then it means that nobody's wrong or evil or ignoring you. It just means that the single focused people speak Spanish and the multi focused speak Italian. And if you speak Italian to a Spaniard, a lot of the words are the same, but it's not the same language. You're going to have to recognize that you're translating. The other part of this that is so important is that the single focus thinkers, the advantage to that is that's how you get things done. The disadvantage is it's really easy to fall into tunnel vision. You don't see the side issues that are going to derail you. The multi-focus thinkers are the ones who are going to see all the pieces. And so they're going to see the trap that's coming up, that the single focus thinker is so in love with his idea that he's going to keep on going. And the multi-focus thinkers will say, yes, but you really want to have both to get things done. But you also have to recognize that there's value in both. And because we've had centuries where women had no political, social power and no financial power, Western civilization is more or less built on the single focused principles.
Yeah.
and changing that. So in some ways, I think it's nobody's fault. It's just centuries of tradition.
It's just what is. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the important part is, but where do we go from here?
Yes.
So,
If you
so how are you
recognize.
helping them with that? That's my question.
So where I'm helping is I mostly work with women, happy to work with men, but it's mostly women who show up on my doorstep. If you are a relational thinker, the kind of person who wants all the context, all the details, the advantage to that is you're going to see all the side things. The disadvantage is because it's relational, anytime there's pushback, we tend to take it personally. So if you have an idea and somebody shoots you down, it feels like they're shooting you down personally, not necessarily your idea. Whereas, this is another way we're socialized as kids, little boys are taught to compete, and they are taught to, if you fall down, you get up and keep on going. Little girl, if she falls down, people say, "Oh dear, did you hurt yourself? Did you get yourself dirty? Be careful." I have a friend who says boys are taught to be courageous, girls are taught to be careful. And this again is stereotypes. Not everybody fits that exactly. The multi-focus thinkers, if you're talking to a single focus thinker, you want them to do something, you've got to give it concisely. I think that's why bullet points were invented. You've got to be concise. Tell them at the beginning if this is something that they need to take action on, or is it an update? Because this changes the way they're going to listen. But they're only going to hold one thing in their head at a time. So don't tell them 5 of them at once. The multi-focus thinkers can keep 5 ideas going at once. And if you're talking in a group of women, you can be talking about 5 things at once. But the single focus people aren't going to get it. And we're all a little bit of both. In teaching storytelling, I mostly teach people how to be concise and compelling. And because of 30 years teaching opera singers how to be interesting on stage, not everybody who's born with a voice and who can make beautiful sound knows how to act. So I spent 30 years teaching opera singers how to be compelling, how to deliver the material in a compelling way. I now do that with speakers.
Yeah. So speaking of which, because we're there and then we're going to come back to the storytelling, there was an experience that you had with an opera singer. I'm going to let you share who that was. It's on your sizzle reel. I loved it so much because it's just you're talking about a person that's going to go on stage and some of the things that you suggested. I think there was 3, and then what the outcome was. So tell that story just like you did on the sizzle reel because I love it. It's just so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. So I had a client once, and he was very well known. He was really good at what he did, but he had a big presentation coming up and he was nervous. So I said, "Look, let's practice, let's rehearse, and I can help you." And he said, "No, no, no, I'm too busy. I'm too much else. I'll just I'll wing it." But then the more he waited, the more nervous he got. And finally, he called me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, the night before it was due. And he called me up because he couldn't sleep. So why should I? In those days, I had a landline, so you can't turn a landline off during sleeping. And he said, "I need your help. I can't do this alone. Can you help me?" And so we met the next day, since the presentation was that night. I gave him 3 things to do. There were 2 of them were how he was delivering the material, and one was a physical thing he was doing that was sabotaging him, and he didn't realize it because he couldn't see. But then that night, I got to watch him walk out in front of a packed room and be brilliant. He was brilliant. He did everything right. The audience loved him. They jumped to their feet and they gave him a standing ovation. And the expression on his face as he took in the applause made me smile so hard that my cheeks hurt. This is why I do what I do. And that client was Luciano Pavarotti, singing the role of Radames in Aida at the Metropolitan Opera.
Yeah. And you know why I love that story so much is because, first of all, you're giving us an example of a story, and we could feel ourselves being there. And the fact that you had the experience with him, it wasn't just about him, about you smiling ear to ear, because you could feel the energy that was he was giving. And I believe that is why you do what you do. That is your
Yeah,
calling. And that's when we all, whoever's listening, you're in a corporate environment, you're an entrepreneur, you're about to become an entrepreneur, whatever it is in your life, we are here as gifts and we have these gifts. And when we excel in those gifts and we share those gifts with the world, we're smiling as well. So I'm
yeah.
just excited to hear how much you're helping these women. And I want you to share a little bit more about these webinars, because I think this is a good place for women to start right now. Because this isn't just about speaking on stage. You shared a story about Pavarotti, but you also alluded to people about being in a corporate environment. They want to get a
Mhm.
raise, they want to get a better job, they want to get a promotion. These are all the areas that you help women in. And so, share a little bit about these webinars and how they can become involved and get that information and then possibly work with you. I'll put your Calendly link on there as well to make an appointment with you. But I
Thank
think
you.
it's important so that you can share with women what it is that they can use this for. It's not just that arena, it's so many other areas.
That's why I call myself a presentation skills trainer. How
Mhm.
do you present yourself?
Right.
When you say speaker trainer, it puts you in a box. And
Mhm.
everybody says, oh, that's about giving a keynote speech. But really, that's just a small part of what I do. Most of what I do is help people talk in a way that will convince somebody.
Mhm.
So if you're giving a report, or if you're speaking at a networking event to attract clients, where it starts is, who are you looking for and what do they care about?
Mhm.
Rule number one. Rule number one is use strategic empathy to put yourself in the shoes of your listeners.
Mhm.
What do they care about? And this is marketing 101. This is
Yeah.
very basic marketing. And
Very
yet
basic.
we all forget. It's one of those
Uh-huh.
things that, yeah, you have to be reminded. I do too. I
Bring this up.
always have to be reminded is make it about the listener, which actually helps with stage fright too. If it helps with
Mhm.
being nervous, if you can make it about them and get out of your own head, that also helps with the nerves. So the webinars are an introduction to one of my favorite storytelling methods. Just I take people through a process where they can you write a story that you could deliver in a minute? So imagine
Mm.
that you've run out for lunch. You run out to get some lunch, you run to the store, and you're standing in line at the deli counter, and you're next to your boss or an influencer, somebody who could make a difference.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, Debbie, I haven't seen you in a while. Catch me up. What's going on? You have until you get to the cash register to
Mhm.
tell the story. Could you do it? Most of us can't. The
No.
other thing I've learned is it's really hard to invent. It's so much easier to write it out, figure it out first, and practice. So
Mm.
the Luciano Pavarotti story I told you, I have worked on and worked on so that I say what I want to say in a
Mhm.
way that I want to say it that's going to appeal to an audience that doesn't understand what it's like to be an opera director. And
Mhm.
I want someone who understands what it's like to be nervous before they have to give a presentation. So it's all real, it all happened. I have crafted the words and the
Mm.
delivery style as best I can so that I can make an impression.
Yeah. And I
And
love
this
that.
is what, yeah, yeah.
I love that because I did watch the sizzle reel. And it's not as if you're standing on stage, people go, she crafted that. We're so in the moment of it. But at the same time, everybody that's listening, I want you to know that she's a skilled expert at what she does, that she could craft that story and use the words that are going to move somebody. Because if you hear it for the first time, I know I am. I'm moved by it. And that's the purpose of those stories. So I think these are
I,
brilliant things that you're sharing.
I also have to say that I have told this story many times now, but I always bring myself back to that moment.
You have to
And the
feel it.
reason why I talk about why it made me smile so hard that my cheeks hurt and I feel my cheeks is because I'm putting myself back there and remembering what that felt like and why I care about it.
Yeah.
Because reminds me that was an amazing moment to watch someone that I had helped go out and do their thing and be brilliant and get all the results they wanted. And I helped
Mhm.
that. One of the things I had to learn between, I started out, I grew up being I was a theater kid. I was going to be a famous actress. And then I realized I was a better director than I was an actor, which was a bitter pill at 19. But I figured it out that I didn't have to be. I think about pottery. My mother was a potter. My mother was a brilliant artist. And I thought, okay, I don't have to be the clay. I can be the potter and I can be the
Mm,
person that helps shape that. And then the bowl comes out of the kiln and it's this beautiful object that someone is going to use or put up on a shelf because they love it. I don't have to be that beautiful object. I can be the person that helped shape it. And that was a major lesson for me. And so that's where I get my goodies. That's where I get my success and
yeah.
my good feelings is when I see somebody go, "Oh, I get it."
Yeah.
And so that's the best part for me. Is watching
Yeah.
somebody own
Yeah.
the skill that we've worked on.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful because you were so clear about that you have to feel it. So it isn't even telling a story multiple times so that we get rote about it. It's like performing on Broadway. The performers
Mhm.
on Broadway, the really good ones, they're still in that moment, that character as they're making that performance because the audience always knows. The audience always knows. Are they being authentic? Are they being rote? And
Yeah.
being a lecturer is not going to move somebody to the place that you're sharing about. And I think that's one of the most brilliant things that women can hear is that we still have to, in our story, we have to be the emotion in the story in order to deliver it, to have someone else feel it. It's not as if we're just reading a piece of paper.
Yeah, well,
That's
and
really
the
important.
Broadway actors do it 8 times a week, and hats
I
off to
know.
them because
I know.
they do it 8 times a week, and people still dissolve into tears or
Exactly.
laugh, which is comedy's much harder. Uh,
Yes.
and also part of telling the story, you craft a story. The person who writes the children's book that you grew
Mm,
up learning thought about each word.
yes.
And the person who creates that TV ad for the car has
Mhm.
thought about what it looks like. And the director has thought about what the shots are and what everybody's. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. So if you are trying to convince people to do something, that's what I
Mhm.
do. So I teach people how do you use storytelling and speech to convince someone to take action, whether the action
Mhm.
is to hire you or to promote you or sign up with your project, something like that. It's designed to get a result. And here's the other thing, stories are the starting point. And the
Mhm.
reason I usually start with teaching people about stories is because it's a concrete piece that you can do and you can get that idea. It is a part of conversation. It's not everything that we say. I think of stories are like raisins in a muffin. I had a client, one of my early clients he was an employment lawyer. And one of his jobs was to talk to the clients at the end of the year to say, okay, here are all the legal changes that are coming down that you're going to
Yeah.
have to comply with. and it was just deadly boring.
Yeah.
And his boss knew me, and his boss said, "Help, okay, Greg, you're going to go work with Elizabeth, learn how to be interesting." And so part of what we did was we worked on how he could get the important information through. So they had to learn this stuff. They had to know this stuff. But he put in metaphors, he put in stories, he put in, this is why this matters. This is why don't skip this one, because if you get caught, that's really going to hurt you. That kind of thing. So the stories are the raisins in the muffin that sort of spice it up. The muffin is still the actual information that you're delivering.
Mhm.
So it all works together.
Yeah. So you said something in the very beginning, and I keyed in on it because I think that this is really something that trips women and entrepreneurs up a lot, and that is this word branding. Your ideal client, your niche, your branding, all of that. I put it under the same umbrella. And it keeps people stuck or they don't know what to do with it. But you said something about how to tell stories in lieu of or help you with branding. So tell me a little bit about what your statement was and what you actually meant about that.
That's a good question. It's a great question, Debbie. Thank you. Your brand is who you are.
Yes.
So people are going to work with you or hire you or promote you, or they're going to want to work with you because of all the pieces of who you
Right.
are. And so we get to decide how we show up.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of what I do in terms of presentation skills is how do you show up as a leader?
Mhm.
And there's the 1,000,000,000 different things involved in there. Storytelling is a piece of it. So
Mhm.
you can talk about, I just told the story of Greg, the employment lawyer, how we made him be more interesting. Because also, if you're telling the story, people remember stories more than they remember facts. So
Yes.
you need that story as a hook to remember that. Branding is just an easy word to
Mhm.
describe all the various things that you are, what makes you you.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of branding coaches, people who teach people how to do this, and they say
Mhm.
everybody thinks it's just the logo. No,
I
it's really
know.
it's the thought. Who are you being? Who do you
Mhm.
want to be? Who do you want to be perceived as? I often ask people when we're having an early conversation, I say, what do people say about you? What do
Yes.
you want them to say about you? If someone's describing you to somebody else, what are they going to say? And that's so you can actually affect that by the way you communicate, how you communicate, what you say. And some of it is people think that as a speaker trainer, I just help somebody do a keynote. And yes, I would be happy to help you do a keynote.
Right.
But really, for me, it's a lot more about how do we get women's voices heard,
Mhm.
especially getting women's voices heard in places of power, whether it's the boardroom or whether it's leading a community. How do you help someone step into their leadership? Part of what you do is talk about what you're good at and why it matters.
Yeah. I think one of the things that sometimes gets lost in this conversation, especially around speaking, and you just said to learn how to communicate more effectively and authentically. Because
Mhm.
we, as you were sharing, we all have these amazing talents, gifts, whatever makes us who we are. There's not one person on the planet who's exactly the same as another person, even if they're
Mhm.
twins. So I think that's for me to share with women that bring out your authentic self. That is your branding, literally, not the
Mhm.
logo. This is me. And how
Yes.
do I show that more clearly? And what you're doing is doing the Michelangelo thing and taking the stone and then carving the beauty underneath it because we're all in there. We're
Well, it's
all
getting rid of all the parts that aren't you.
That's
You know,
exactly right. All of
like
the parts
when
that are
Michelangelo
inauthentic,
carved the
right?
David, he just
Yep.
chopped away all the pieces that weren't
Yeah.
the David. And you just said something, trying to figure out who we are. That's
Mhm.
why if you talk about what you're good at and
Yeah.
why does it matter? That's the other thing.
Right.
Why does it matter? One of the things I had to learn when I decided I was going to let opera go. And basically what happened was I did opera for 30 years.
Mhm.
And the last 11 of those was running an opera company. And so I had to, and I found that it was starting to be work and not
Yeah.
fun. And
Mhm.
opera, there's a limited number of pieces that you do. So some of them you do over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And I realized that it was starting to be rote. And it's hard to run a company. It's hard enough to run an arts company and to run a nonprofit. If it isn't, if I didn't stop then, I would lose the ability to be moved by the music. And I said, I have to let this go. And so I had to then change when I started working with business professionals. I had to learn how to tell my story in a way that made sense to them. Opera has its own language, just like anything
Yeah.
else. And then you've got the shortcuts, you've got the jargon.
The
If you're,
jargon.
yeah, most of the time, if you like going to the opera, you have no idea what the director has done.
Yeah.
In some ways, if I did my job well, you will just watch the story and say, wow,
Mhm.
amazing, without recognizing how much of my work and how much of my sweat went into doing that. And certainly, newspaper reviewers, they will talk about the singers, how great the singers were. They won't talk about the director.
Of course.
So, outside, when I started working with non opera people, I had to figure out how to talk about what I was good at. And what I finally
Mhm.
came up with, and also nobody does this first time. It's really hard to tell your own story. You know,
Yeah.
it's like that old saying, you can't see the label when you're inside the bottle.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I had to hire a coach to help me with this. But I finally said that for me, directing an opera was about having a vision, getting together with a bunch of really smart people really talented people who most of whom thought they could do it better than I could. So convincing them to follow my vision, then taking the project through all the stages and pulling the best out of each person along the way, and then delivering a result by the end because by the
Mhm.
deadline, because 8 o'clock Saturday night's going to roll around and there are going to be people sitting in those seats who paid a lot for those tickets. The other piece of it was that I was also always aware that I was working for the company. So I was serving Mozart, I was serving the composer, but my job was also to have a vision for a project and create a product that would make the audience so happy they would pay for tickets again, that they would come back, to get them to donate, to get them to say, wow, we're going to keep supporting the opera. So that's the other part. My job was to put something together, deliver it by a deadline, and do it in a way that the public said, yes, we're going to keep supporting, we're going to send our money to this company.
So I want to interrupt you for 1 second because you have just described a leader in a business in America, but all around the world that I have heard anybody explain it because you used a story metaphor basically of opera and how you
Mm-hmm.
did that. But I've taught leadership around the world, and that was the most succinct explanation of what a leader is that I think I have ever heard. So if anybody's listening and you wonder what a leader is, that was it. She just explained it to you. So how do we take that? And then, as you said, these are the things you were good at. How did you translate those into saying or delivering your story to people that are potentially leaders that don't
Mm-hmm.
have a voice?
I make it about them. What is the pain that they are feeling? And how could I help them discover their own leadership? So you asked earlier how to find me. I am on LinkedIn a lot. Written about all of this on LinkedIn, but I talk about this a lot on LinkedIn, and that's how the best way to find out. And it's really just looking at communication skills. And actually, there's another thing about working with women is so much of what we do is invisible work. So me as the opera director, the people who were part of the team, they knew what I was doing, but the paying public did not.
No.
So I had to create that story to show the value of that invisible work.
Yes.
And we're recording this shortly after Halloween. I did a special Halloween newsletter on LinkedIn, which is how do you use horror stories to get promoted? And this is my idea. I learned this one is how do you talk about the value of things not going wrong? And I believe that what you can do is look for horror stories. First of all, you have to figure out what you're good at. And it's all those million little things. But then keep an eye out for other companies, for instance, that are dealing with churn. We could say nobody stays there more than 3 months. They all go because they really hate the boss and so forth and so on. And then you can say, hey, did you hear that company X just lost their top team? I'm so glad that doesn't happen here because of the work I do to make sure that my people stay and are listened to and are fulfilled and so forth. You can get that down into a 60-second story.
Right. Yeah.
But I think of it's like planting a seed. So you plant a seed and you can talk about, oh, the million little things I do to keep my team happy. I was
It's
thinking,
so critical for
yeah,
leaders, managers that are becoming leaders, because I differentiate between the two, that
yes.
we begin to feel how we encourage, how we support, how we create the vision for our team to allow them to fulfill the vision. Because what you were sharing about the opera was you had the vision, then we brought the team together, we put it together, there was the nuts and bolts of it, and then ultimately it goes out to the public who doesn't know any of that. And that's what we're all doing every single day as business owners or in corporate America. We may be the person that's doing the social media for a company. We may be the person who is the C-suite CEO of a company. And our job is to make sure that everything's working. The public doesn't care. The public wants the end product. So how do you support all of the cogs in those wheels when you're talking to one person? Because I found that was the most challenging experience that I had, was like nobody else will help in the organization. The boss won't help. So that person that you're speaking to or coaching, how do you help them feel like they are important? Because really they can come up with all the reasons they are, but how do you embody that feeling important?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. I've been trying to figure out how to really work this into the basic model of what I talk about is allies. That's the other piece is surround yourself with allies. Find the people who will support you. Also, find the people who are going to talk about you. And this is a thing a lot of the time when women complain that men aren't listening. Sometimes it's because women are going on and on and on, and men lose track, and so they tune out. But
Yep.
if somebody else says, wait, but Debbie, that was really great. Wait, say that again, Debbie. That was really important. Then you're more likely to be heard. And there are allies all over the place, male and female. A lot of men I've talked to have said, I would like to support Debbie because I know Debbie's getting talked over all the time and I don't know how. So then I would say, Debbie, why don't you recruit Brian and Sumit and Hans, separately, and say, would you help me? Would you help me if I'm being talked over in the meeting? Will you just speak up and say, wait, that was Debbie's idea? Debbie, tell us again. Something like that. You can recruit allies, you can enroll allies. Of course, you're going to be an ally in return.
Of course.
But you also have to tell them how.
Yes.
You can't just say,
exactly.
step over me. You have to say, here's what you might say. And that, I'm sure you've been there. Someone says, could you speak up for me? I say, I don't know how. Who am I talking
don't
to?
know how. That's right.
Yeah. Tell me what you want me to say.
I think that goes back to when you were sharing earlier about the different types of single focused or multi-focused communications. And we as women, and this is a common theme that women have had forever, we've done it with our husbands. And you're mad and they don't know why you're mad. And you're like, you should know why I'm mad, right? That is the same thing that we do in business as well. So this is really important information that you're giving to this audience, because it's so critical. Number one, that we explain what we need, and nobody knows what's in our brain, nobody except for us, number one. But number two, to go in with a plan. I don't think that enough women have heard this, that when you're coaching, when you're teaching somebody, it's not about just learning new communication, which we can all do. It's a learning experience. And then being rehearsed, having a plan, being very cognizant of what you're sharing and what you're speaking and how you're sharing it, who you're sharing it to, and how they receive information. There's a lot of data points, and it isn't just fly by the seat of your pants, which is what I like to do. And yet it's so going to make a huge difference. So talk about these women that you see and all the people that we don't know what anybody else is thinking.
This is why I call it strategic.
Yeah.
It's strategic speaking first. What's your strategy? How are you doing this? Why is it going to matter? Another thing about the single focus people is you can't just walk in and mention something and assume that they'll hear you.
No.
And I actually learned this from a relationship coach, but she doesn't talk about business. In my marriage, I can't just go in and say, oh, by the way, da, 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 da. If my wife is working on something at the computer, I have to make an appointment.
Yes.
Because then what happens is you come in and you mention it, and then later on they say, what? And you say, I told you that. But they were single focused on something else. They really didn't hear you. So, so here's the thing is, say, could I get 20 minutes of your time? When could we sit down for talking to you? You're not in trouble. That's if it's a spouse. You're not in trouble. I just need to talk about something. Then they are single focused on you because they are like mentally prepared to listen and focus. Here's another piece is also, it's okay to say, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen. That's okay. Or so tell them if you want to brainstorm, because most of us are trained to, well, let's fix a problem. Here's what you might do. Sometimes you just need to get it out of your head so that you can hear it. That's totally legit. Not everyone's going to, you choose carefully the people you're going to do. There are certain people I call up and I say, I need to think through something. Can we chat? And then say, okay, now I want your feedback, but let me get it all out first. If it's something that needs fixing, then say, here's the problem. Here's what I'm trying to get to. And now let me go back and give you the context. So you could just start with, here's the problem. Here's where I think we need to get. Let me tell you why. But they already know to start thinking about this. But here's the background that you need to know. Otherwise, they might suggest, let's bring in so-and-so. And you say, wait a minute, no, you can't do that. That person, they hate each other, that kind of thing. So you have to actually, say, here's the important part you need to know. Basically.
I think the thing that we as humans, especially in today's world, at least that's what it feels like sometimes, is that we believe that everybody is communicating the exact same way that we do.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we will never be able to communicate until we understand that we all hear and say things differently. I remember when I was teaching leadership, I would always give in my courses a personality pro. It was a little simple one. It
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs or anything like that. It was just simple, but it gave you an idea so that you could give it to your team and say, let me feel how you communicate.
Yeah.
Because if they're single-minded focus and I'm just blathering on, we aren't going to be talking about the same thing in the same way. So that in and of itself is just brilliant information that people can learn from you. I want
Well,
you
it's
to
just,
talk
again,
about
it's same words, but different languages.
exactly. I love that analogy that you had in the beginning, that Italian and Mexican or Spanish, and you're talking, and some of the words are even similar. We
Yeah.
think we hear what they're saying, but we
Right.
don't know what their meaning was. And so part of that is us learning how to listen better too. That's my
Oh, yeah.
feeling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yes,
But I
exactly.
would love for you to share. I'm going to put on all your links. I'm going to put your links so people can schedule an impromptu meeting so they can talk to you, your LinkedIn. What other things would you share? What do you want them to know about? And I'll put them on the show notes, your website, anything else, any programs that you have going on, because I want people to take what you have. There's brilliance in here, folks. There's brilliance. And speaking
Oh,
is
Debbie,
not just
thank you
about
so
standing
much.
on a stage, it is about your life. It really is
Yes.
truly about your life. So tell us what's in.
The best way is to connect with me on LinkedIn and say, I
Okay.
heard you on Debbie's podcast.
Okay.
And I am, I found that I've been working on simplifying my life so that I spend time on the things that I really have value. So
Yeah.
LinkedIn is really this social media platform I look at. So that's where I'm active.
Okay. Perfect.
My brain is too full of other things that I can't really
Perfect.
manage more than that. So I
Completely,
just do what? Yeah.
completely
Just,
understand that. And I know I was saying I was going to talk about where you are physically in the world in part of this, because maybe somebody wants to do VIP coaching and they'll come to where you are because it's a beautiful space on the planet. Tell us where you are.
I divide my time between Portland, Oregon, and
Mhm.
the Austrian Alps. So as we are recording this, I am in Austria in the Alps between
Yeah.
Innsbruck and Munich. And thank goodness for the internet that I've been working virtually pretty much since Skype started. If you
Yeah.
remember Skype, I've been working virtually because I've been working with people around the world. And
Yes.
also because in opera for 30 years, I was working, everyone comes from somewhere else to
Mm.
work. You almost never work at home. And so we all would come from someplace else. We put something together, we do the project, and in multiple languages. And
Mm.
so I've been living and working internationally since I was 17. And so when I found opera, it had music, theater,
Mm.
languages, and travel. And I thought, perfect. And for 30 years, it worked. And then I finally just got to the point where okay, I had to do something else. It was time to pivot.
But you still have this amazing life, and that's the point of all of it, is you have taken radical responsibility for making those pivots,
Worked
because
hard to
there's
make
many
that
women
happen.
on this, yeah, many women listening that are in that same place that you were sharing about when the last 10 years it just wasn't feeding your soul anymore. So you're
Mm-hmm.
feeding your soul again, you're feeding our souls, and I am so pleased and blessed that you had graced us with your presence today, because there's so much valuable information here, and I hope we will be able to have you back, because I don't think we've actually told the whole story. There's so much more that you're giving to the world, and it's been an absolute delight having you. I want to take
Thank you,
one
Debbie.
last
Yeah.
opportunity for you to share what
I
is your best sage wisdom after all of these years of being on this planet, because I call us wise women when we get to a certain age, that you would share with a younger you, but speaking to a woman who's in today's world, that she could do to move herself forward to finding her purpose, passion, gifts.
You don't have to do it alone. There's this myth that we're supposed to be strong, and it's okay to ask for help
Yeah.
and be strategic about it. one of the reasons why I hit a glass ceiling and had to wound up founding an opera company because no one would hire me, there were people who would have helped me if I had asked, but I was too chicken to ask. So ask for help.
Yeah.
Find your board of advisors. Find the
Mhm.
ones that are going to help you. You'll help them. It's always easier to help someone else.
Yeah.
So figure out what you need and ask for it. I
Yeah.
spend a lot of money on my coaches
Mhm.
because I know I can't do it all alone.
Yeah.
And that's been one of the things I've learned the most is get help, pay for it. They
That's
should be paid for their expertise.
such wisdom. I love that. Of course, that's so absolutely true for everybody, especially for women. So, again, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being a guest here today. And I can't wait to see what's next for you. Have an amazing day.